Hey everybody. So in the previous video, we centered the billet, we put the dimples in the end, we put it on the lathe, and then we smoothed the bat out so there's no wobble. As you can see here, I did one additional step without you, and that was I put the lines on the wood, and these lines are specific for the bat model that I'm making. So this bat model in particular is kind of an odd one in my opinion. This is for one of my friends. So when it's done, it kind of looks like a softball bat, but it's not a softball bat. It's just the way he wanted his bat to be made. So with that said, there are a number of different types of bat models. The typical one is a 271 model, and that's like the most balanced bat you're typically going to see out there. And there's a whole bunch of different models you can get. The point is, when you have the bat, the one that you're going to be modeling it off of, you want to measure, in my opinion, every 2 inches of the bat. So you can see how the bat's slowly or quickly changing in size. In this case, it's not every 2 inches because, as you can see here, as we go along, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 inches, around the 13-inch mark, I noticed that the bat really started to taper off, right? It started to get much smaller here. So, in my opinion, for this bat, I mixed it up a little bit. The point is, though, you want to have some sort of increment system so you can monitor the change in the bat diameters. So, here you go. This is the new bat or the new billet. I have all my stuff marked off. At the very end, you can see here, this is where the knob's going to be. Just make sure that when you're doing your bats, you have everything set up accurately. Um, Once you do that, sometimes I'll take a pencil like here, spin it, add the lines, makes life a little bit easier when you're cutting. Um, and then I also put the numbers on it so I know what I'm looking at, so I don't have to go crazy looking to and from the book. After that, I am going to start to scrape away the wood. So as I mentioned before, I have my book with the measurements, and I have my caliper, which you can kind of see. I tucked it underneath the lathe, and here we go. Turn off the lathe, check it out. Too big still. Put it back, turn the lathe on, start cutting again. You just gotta be careful. You don't want to cut too deep because if you go too deep, it's a bad day. With that said, very important, at least in my opinion. Everyone has their own ways. Um, when I do my measurements, I always add 1/16 of an inch to the wood. The reason I do that is because when you sand, if there's any kind of mistakes in the wood, there's a chance you have to sand a little bit more than you want to. And that could be devastating for something like a handle of a bat. Because if you have a handle that is 15/16 of an inch, which is less than an inch, and you have to sand off an additional 1/16 of an inch, that makes a huge difference, like I talked about in my last video. So, with that said, if I'm going to cut, I'm going to add 1/16 of an inch to all my measurements. For example, if on my barrel it's 2.5 inches, I am going to pick up my caliper and I'm going to put in 2 and 9/16 rather than 2.5 inches, right? So if you're familiar, 2.5 inches is 2 and 8/16. So I'll add 1/16 of an inch, 1 and 9/16, and then I'll cut it to that. So the bat's technically a little bit bigger than it should be. And then when I sand, it cuts away that extra 16th of an inch or so. And usually when you're doing this too, you may make a small mistake and it may be a little bit smaller than you want. So why overcompensate? The most important reason why is because you can always cut off more of the bat, but you can't add anything back on. So if you go too far, you may get lucky and be able to spin the whole bat around on the lathe, but a lot of times you're not, and you may have to throw that whole bat out or find a new purpose for it. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. Anyways, I'm going to continue to keep doing this until I get to a point where I can use my rough gouging tool and start to smooth it out. So you're going to see you can do this all the way down the bat first, or you can do like I've been doing. And once you make the first few cuts, you can go and just smooth it out before you move on. And we're going to do that in the next video.